We're talking about Monday's decision by a Waller County grand jury not to indict anyone in the death of Sandra Bland, who died in a Waller County jail cell 3 days after she was stopped by a police officer, supposedly for failing to signal a lane change. We're joined by the family attorney, Canon Lambert, Sandra's mother, Geneva Reed-Veal, as well as Sharon Cooper, Sandra's sister. Sharon Cooper, if you too could respond to the decision by the grand jury. Now, it's not over. The case of Brian Encinia, the officer who first stopped Sandra, has not been weighed by the grand jury yet. But those responsible for her death in the jail cell have not been indicted.
It is, I definitely would like to echo my mother's sentiment in terms of, I would say, just from a sibling's perspective and being a surviving member of something as tragic as this, I will tell you that it is disappointing and it's heart-wrenching, but at the same time, not surprising, given the fact that we are guided by excellent legal counsel and felt that we were a bit prepared for this to be the case in light of the lack of participation and transparency that we have received from the DA's office in this case, as well as the opposing side in general. I will tell you that I'm not all that hopeful that there will be charges brought against Officer Encinia, because in the 5 months since Sandy's passing, the dash cam video was made readily available days after we went to Texas for the first time, and so there is unequivocally no doubt that Officer Encinia performed in an unprofessional way and that his conduct was gross at best, and so I'm not sure how much more time the other side needs to how much clearer it can be for the other side. So I'm not hopeful that he will even be indicted on charges, and I personally believe that it is a travesty, because I do believe that the stop in his behavior was the impetus for Sandy's detainment, and ultimately the reason why she's no longer here with us today.
And before we get to the officer's action, I wanted to ask Canon Lambert about the investigation about the death of Sandra Bland in the cell. You've raised questions about the evidence, how the evidence was preserved, about whether proper fingerprinting was done of the bag in which she was found. Could you talk about that as well?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that they say that they did is they did a thorough investigation. Well, I have difficulty with that notion, because if you do a thorough investigation and you follow the directives of the DA, like what was supposedly suggested, that you were going to address this as a homicide, you at the very least would take fingerprints of the instrument of death. The plastic bag, as we understand it, has not been even fingerprinted. Well, how can you suggest that you did an independent and thorough investigation when you haven't even fingerprinted the instrument of death? So how is it that a grand jury is going to get evidence that they can make a real decision from? I mean, that's exactly the problem that you have, right? It's an example of how whatever evidence they want to submit, they'll submit. If they want an indictment, they get an indictment.
I wanted to ask about the prosecutor and what he has said, Prosecutor Daryl Jordan. He said, when I see them on the news, he's talking, this was a quote that he gave to the Chicago Sun-Times, and he's talking about you all, the family of Sandra Bland. When I see them on the news stating they've been left out of the process, that's not because of us. We're begging to talk to the Bland family. We're begging to answer any questions that they have. I've never heard of a criminal case where the prosecutor did not talk to the victim's family. Any parent deserves to know anything out there that relates to the death of their child. Can you tell us what your allegations are in terms of the lack of communications with the prosecutor, Geneva Reed-Veal?
I have had no communication with the prosecutor. I am not privy to anything other than an initial contact very early on in this proceeding, and I will have to let Canon, my attorney, speak to that, because he was the one that handled that.
Let's be very, very, very clear. As soon as Mr. Jordan was appointed as a special prosecutor, he contacted us. We were in Houston while he was traveling on a personal family excursion to Indianapolis. He asked if he could meet us the following day. I told him that we were unable to do that because we were going to still be in Houston, but that we were happy to do so. Just let us know when he'd like to do that. He never again contacted us. Now, he is the investigator. He knows his process. He knows his schedule. I asked him in that one conversation, well, what are you investigating? Who are you looking at? And the like. Those are the questions that this family has. If he's serious about what he said about any family should have answers to questions that they have about their loved one, well, why wouldn't he answer those questions? I can tell you he didn't. I'll also tell you that we never again heard from him until after they came back with their determination that there was no indictment to be had. And so now he goes on TV and he suggests that this is when they'd love to talk to the family. You want to talk to the family after you've decided that there's no indictment that's necessary or that's appropriate? That's crazy.
How did you learn of the non-indictment? How did you learn of the non-indictment?
Through the media. ABC 13 in Houston contacted me by way of text and let me know. And it was 15 minutes or so after that that I got a text message from Mr. Jordan. And that was the second time that I had been in contact with him. So the bottom line is that frankly speaking, when you do an investigation or when you're trying to make a determination, you first have to do your investigation. You don't make a determination and then backdoor the investigation.
I wanted to ask about Officer Encinia's actions. Sharon Cooper, you mentioned his unprofessional conduct in the original arrest, because obviously your sister would never have been in jail had he not arrested her and had the confrontation he had with her. This whole issue of whether the officer even reported on his official incident report exactly what happened. What do you know about that?
I will tell you, and it's another great example of very basic information that we don't have. This incident happened on Friday, July 10th. We are 2 days out from Christmas, and we still don't have the initial police report that Brian Encinia would have authored after this incident to memorialize all that transpired. What I can tell you is based off of what we've seen on the dash cam video, and although it's painful to watch, I think it's imperative to watch it frame by frame so that you can see exactly the improper behavior that took place by Officer Encinia. I think it's important to note that he clearly states to Sandy that he's going to give her a warning, or that he was going to give her a warning, and there was a seismic shift in his behavior when he asked her, not demanded of her, not lawfully ordered of her, but asked her to put her cigarette out, to which she replied, why do I have to put my cigarette out? Because I'm in my own vehicle. So it's at that point that he escalates, not de-escalates the situation. And so although we don't have an actual police report, what I can tell you is if you look at that tape closely and you zero in what he's calling in to his superiors, he flat out lies about what transpired at the stop. He says that he tried to de-escalate the situation. He says, I don't know why she got so upset. I never told her she was under arrest. He told her she was under arrest after she said to him, I don't have to get out of my car. Am I under arrest? And he says, yes, you are. She asked him 14 times why she was under arrest and received no response. So it's the dash cam video coupled with the strength of the bystander video, which shows the use of Officer Encinia's continual excessive force after he yanked Sandy out of the vehicle and even pulled his taser and threatened to light her up.
Now, after she's arrested and she's in jail, she faces $5,000 bond. She made a phone call from jail to a friend, and we wanted to play the voice message that was left on his voicemail.
Hey, this is me. I just was able to see the judge. I don't really know. They got me set at a $5,000 bond. I'm still just at a loss for words, honestly, about this whole process. How they're switching lanes with no signal turned into all of this, I don't even know. But I'm still here, so I just call me back when you can.
Canon Lambert, have you ever had this explained, why she faced a $5,000 bond if the charge was not signaling a lane change? Canon Lambert.
I'll say this to you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'll say this to you. The bottom line is that when the bail is set It's predicated on what the charge is. And the falsification that Mr. Insigne engaged in was the impetus behind that bail being set in the way that it was. And so we go back again, we find ourselves at least having to go back again to the stop. When he lied about what he did, he also lied about what she did. And that was the reason why she ends up in jail. So, you know, look, they're saying right now that they still need to go and reconvene back in January. And I'm asking myself the same, you know, sort of questions that Sharon mentions. All of the evidence that they need as to what Brian Insigne's conduct was is right on tape. And they've had that videotape for 5 months. What other investigation is there to do?
Can you talk about the civil suit and the kind of evidence and information you're able to gather for that civil suit and where it stands?
Well, the problem with the civil suit is that right now we're kind of we're in a holding pattern. One of the things that we've been trying to get from the very inception is the Texas Ranger report. The Texas Ranger report includes all of the witness statements that were taken, all of the evidence that was gathered. It constitutes where all of the information regarding what Sandy's state was when she was first found. It will let us know if the individuals involved who found her took body temperatures, whether or not they gauged her rigor and liger conditions, those sorts of things, so that we'll be able to determine the date and time of her death. The whole 9 yards is going to be enclosed in that Texas Ranger report. Well, the problem is that we've not been able to get the Texas Ranger report. Sharon mentions the initial police report. That's one of the things that will be mentioned and will be contained in that Texas Ranger report. We can't get that right now because the defendants they've been claiming that there's a criminal proceeding that's taking place, namely the grand jury. Well, the grand jury now has made its decision. I'm specifically asking that Daryl Jordan, when he decides that he wants to address the media, that he speak to the fact that there is no reason that the release of the Texas Ranger report would impede the remainder of what it is that the grand jury has to do. All he's got to do is make that reference and make it clear, because that is the situation and everybody knows it. If he makes that representation, then there's no reason why we can't get the Texas Ranger report, and therefore no reason we can't continue to move forward in the civil action.
Well, this tragedy, of course, has drawn national attention for months now. And in a statement, Democratic presidential candidate and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said, quote, "There's no doubt in my mind that Sandra Bland, like too many African Americans who die in police custody, would be alive today if she were a white woman. We need to reform a very broken criminal justice system." In August, during a campaign rally in South Carolina, Sanders invoked the name of Sandra Bland and other men and women who have been killed by the police or died while in jail custody in recent years.
We must be clear that when we're talking about racism, we are talking about Sandra Bland, Michael Brown, Rekia Boyd, we are talking about Eric Garner. We're talking about Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, and many others. Many, many others over the years whose names we do not know. And these people died unnecessarily and wrongly at the hands of police officers or in police custody. That must change.
That was Bernie Sanders in August of this year. I wanted to ask Mr. Lambert the issue of what you're calling for in terms of federal intervention at this point by the federal government.
Yeah, the reason we're asking for federal intervention is because, number one, the DA, Elton Mathis, is the one that appointed the 5 special prosecutors that were supposed to be investigating this situation. And if you remember back, they were saying that they had full and complete access to all of the evidence and that they had subpoena power and the like. Well, part of the problem with regard to Mr. Looney and Mr. Mathis's relationship is that there is, it seems that it's not independent. And so when you don't have an independent examination of all of the evidence, and when you have the leader of that special prosecutorial group saying we're not looking to determine whether or not there were any criminal actions that were engaged in by the Waller County Police, then you have to ask for outside eyes to look at this situation, because from the very outset it appears they never had any intention of trying to determine what happened in that jail.
I wanted to go to Sandra herself in her own words. Sandra was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. She'd become an outspoken supporter. She produced a series of videos called Sandy Speaks, in which she discussed social justice and racism on her Facebook page.
I want the white folks to really understand out there, black people are truly, we're doing as much as we can. Not all of us, but some of us are really doing as much as we can. And we can't help but get off when we see situations where it's clear the black life didn't matter. For those of you questioning why was he running away, well, because in the news that we've seen as of late, you could stand there, surrender to the cops, and still be killed.
It's been a number of months, about half a year, since Sandra Bland was killed. And Geneva Reed-Veal, your thoughts now as we move into this holiday season, how you're coping and the response that you've gotten to Sandy's death.
I'm coping right now day to day. I'm coping as best as I can as a mother, and I will say to you that anyone who has to openly grieve in this manner, it's a tough thing to do, but you learn how to go on day by day just saying to yourself, you have to continue to get justice for your child. For me right now, 6 months almost later, dealing with more questions than I had before, and not being able to have anything, access to anything, it makes it very hard to move forward when you have an open window, a cloud over your head of what really happened. So at this point, I'm still saying, what happened to Sandra Bland? I cannot be expected to believe what I've not been able to receive as evidence as it pertains to what has happened to my daughter. And that's what I am being asked to do in some cases by great lengths of folks. You have people who are totally supportive of the family that I am grateful for. I am grateful for those people because they will show the world that this is a problem. There is a problem here. And the fact that it's continuing to be talked about over Twitter, over the internet, social media, there is a problem that exists that people want an answer to. People want a fix to this situation. And so being a parent and watching all of this and knowing that my daughter's death has reignited grave concerns, it's awesome. I have to tell you, just the support is overwhelming. And I can't even begin to say thank you enough to those who still stand in the gap, to those who still go out, to those who still talk about Sandy's life, death, every day. There's something out there about her case every day. And it's great to see that people are still aware, regardless of the lack of evidence that's been shown to us and the world, really. People are still aware, and people are still keeping up with this because they want to know what happened.
And Canon Lambert, why we're talking about the grand jury reconvening in the case of Officer Encinia now? Usually if a person is involved with an assault or there is a question, an arraignment happens within days. Now, granted, this is a police officer, but can you explain the order of how this is being investigated?
Well, I wish I could, but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the reality of it is that I don't believe that police should be treated any better or any worse, frankly, than any other citizen. When it comes down to when you break the law, and you should be held accountable, whether you wear a badge or not. So the bottom line is that when we look at what this situation really before us is, it's a situation where you can clearly see that an unlawful order was issued, that he used excessive force, that he falsified his reports. He illegally searched and violated her Fourth Amendment rights, and he should be held to account. So when it comes down to why it is that they're seeming to say they need more time to assess what his conduct was, I'll be frank with you, I think we are all flabbergasted by that. It does not make sense. That's the easiest part of this entire situation to assess, because it's caught on tape.
Well, I want to thank you all for being with us. Canon Lambert, family attorney, Sharon Cooper, Sandy's sister, and Geneva Reed-Veal, the mother of Sandra Bland, speaking to us all from Chicago. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. When we come back, we go to Minneapolis, to the Mall of the America, the largest mall in the United States, which attempted to stop a protest from taking place today, attempted to try to get Black Lives Matter activists removing from their Facebook pages the call for the protest and posting a cancellation of that protest. A judge ruled against the mall yesterday, but also ruled that some of the organizers cannot show up to the protest today. We'll speak with one of them. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Amy Goodman. I want to thank you for tuning in to Democracy Now! We are so grateful to our fans and followers for being a part of the daily conversation. By choosing a news source that's committed to the truth, you're carrying the message of independent media, reaching hundreds of thousands of people every day. In these times of war and elections, we need a media not sponsored by corporations that profit from war, but a media that's truly independent, funded by you. Democracy Now! Is not paid for by the weapons manufacturers, the insurance industry, or the oil, gas, coal, or nuclear companies. We don't take advertising or corporate underwriting dollars. That means we rely on your donations to make our daily independent news hour possible. We need your support today to keep bringing you the hard-hitting, in-depth reporting you've come to expect 5 days a week. Visit democracynow.org, or you can call 888-999-3877. That's 888-999-3877 to make your holiday gift to Democracy Now! Today. Thanks so much for sharing Democracy Now! Stories all year long.